I had the privilege of knowing my grandpa Harold for 37 of his 94 years. About 6 months after he passed, I was thinking about him, and I made a list of 6 great lessons that I learned from my grandfather. Those 6 lessons include: write down each day what you want to accomplish and cross it off as you go so you don't leave out anything important. And finally, number 6, make sure your message is understood. But that last one he taught me somewhat inadvertently. Here's what happened. For his 85th birthday, we wanted to take him out to a really nice restaurant. But he insisted that we take him to the Broadway Diner. I'm telling you, if you make a reservation and you call them in advance and tell them it's your birthday and you're a senior, they give you a free cake with happy birthday and your name on it. She goes to bring it back to him and he says, "No, take it away. You ruined my birthday." And all because he didn't take the time to communicate effectively or let someone else do it who could have done it well. So inadvertently, my grandfather taught me to make sure your message is understood. And as speakers, nothing is more important than making sure our message reaches our intended audience in a manner that is clear, interesting, moving, and potentially repeatable. Now let's think back to that first story I told you about my grandfather. Why did I tell you that story? Well, there's a couple of reasons, but let's remember one part. Remember when I was talking to you and I said I learned 6 great lessons from my grandfather? Is there anyone here who could tell me what the first 5 were at this point? Nobody? Oh, come on. Those were important lessons I learned from my grandfather. And hey, I took the time to put them in PowerPoint for you. And I read them to you. And no audience yet has been able to do it, so don't feel bad. Why? Because we see things and they come and go. It's not how our brains work, and it's not what we know works from studying the brain. And yet we keep doing it. But how about that last lesson, the 6th one? I'm betting everybody here, I'm seeing nods, everybody remembers that one? Make sure your message is understood. And why? Because I told a story. And with that story, that message stayed with you far more, while the other 5 just disappeared. So in learning a little bit about my grandfather, you learned a little bit more about what I wanted you to. And that's the power of story. If there's just one thing you get out of today's program, let it be this. Never underestimate the power of story. Stories have a way of making messages stay in our minds in ways that data never can. When I became a coach, I realized that was one of the first things I want to get rid of. I mean, what is that anyway? Tell them what you're going to tell them. That's your 4th grade teacher. Introduction, 3 supporting paragraphs, and a conclusion. And that conclusion was always the hardest part to write, right? Because it felt like just repeating yourself. What else were you going to say? You'd said it all. So I throw that whole model away, and we use something called the 4 steps to successful speech structure. So let's look at them now. The first thing we're going to start with is the capture. Now think back to that story about my grandfather. I captured your attention with a fairly entertaining story. The capture has to be in some way intriguing, entertaining, but also relate to the topic at hand. Here's one of the best parts. The audience doesn't have to know why. I'm guessing, I don't know for sure, that about half of you were wondering, what is this story about his grandfather? Where is he going? And the other half were just caught up in the story and forgot to even worry about where I was going. Either way, I'm fine because of the second step. The second step is called the transition. That was the point in the story where I said, so inadvertently, my grandfather taught me to make sure my message is understood. And as speakers, nothing is more important than making sure our message reaches our intended audience in a manner that is clear, interesting, moving, and potentially repeatable. I'm sure you remember when I said all that. Those are the only 2 lines in the whole speech that I memorized, because it's the way I'm getting out of that opening story with a capture and transitioning into today's topic, improving our public speaking. When you start with a capture and a transition, moving into your body becomes way easier. Now, we have the 4 steps to successful speech structure in place. We love our program, it's well written, we're doing great. Now you just got to deliver it just as well as you wrote it. And to help you do that, I'm going to go over what's called the 7 variants of vocal variety. 7 things you can do to adjust your voice so that you don't put the audience to sleep. So let's look at the easiest one first. Volume. Why wouldn't you want to keep your volume the same the whole time for consistency? Because sometimes a little more volume implies passion or anger or intensity about something. So you might want to get louder. you also might want to back off a little bit to show tenderness, to let the audience in on a secret. To do anything where backing off a little bit might make a point stay stronger. So that's volume. Then there's pitch. We want to go high with our voices once in a while. Maybe not that high. We want to go low with our voices once in a while so that I can emphasize the key word in that sentence. Notice how key just jumped out. Pitch is a great way to do it. And to end on a note that's really significance, like I went down on significant. So that's the second one.